Hi, welcome everybody. It's Thursday, August 1st, 2024, and I am Patrick Durkin from the Wellness Enterprise. And we have a longtime friend of the company, Theo Lucier. You and I just really enjoy each other. We were having an amazing conversation about a month ago, and I was like, gosh, we talked more than an hour. I was like, it's so fun to talk to you. I was like, you just come to Lavanya and be my guest, and we'll just talk with them the way we talk with each other.
Oh,
And so that's the spirit of this call. And we'll give a prompt of something that we can talk about and focus on. And it's a big topic and we could chew on it for days. But you guys can take this conversation anywhere you want. So if there's any question that you want to ask, we ended up getting a bonus. We got Theo here today. We've got Zane, who's one of the Lavanya teachers. This is wide open. So if it's on your heart and you want to ask about it, let's talk about it. So I'll start the prompt. And the prompt is there the cities in this world are getting super saturated and concentrated with toxins of all types. And it's becoming questionable about what happens to a human energy field while living in a city. And do we need to move away? And do we need to move into the country? And I've been thinking about this for a really long time. And I didn't I didn't take the like question at heart and sit down and say, should I move? I just listened to the unfoldment of my life for the last dozen years. And that took me from Massachusetts raising kids to Texas healing from Lyme disease to North Carolina in the woods for a year, back to Texas. And then I was sitting in Texas and two of my kids ended up in Hawaii for the summer. And I was like, well, I should go to Hawaii and be with them. And then my friend Kiko asked me to come and stay with her. I'm actually at Kiko's today. And I live on Maui now, and I'm looking at homes in really natural places. And so I seem to have found a way to participate in this conversation that just guided me through. But we can sit and have a more directed conversation about it. So Theo lives in San Diego and he travels to Montana and to Minnesota. He's got a nice piece of wild man in his life. You know, he really gets out in nature and explores that big sky and that open spaces. And then he gets like really concentrated into a very intense city. So there's a lot of richness here. So that's what we're going to talk about today. You guys can raise your hands at any point. You can put questions in the chat. You can add comments. You can do whatever you want. But let's start by, I think I'm gonna Nico, can you go ahead and mute everybody? And no, you can't.
I already tried that, but it didn't. I couldn't.
Okay, let me see if I can do it. Okay, I'm gonna mute everybody. And then
Got it.
you guys can unmute as wanted, and everybody is welcome to unmute and talk in the conversation. We just don't want noise that's not intentional. So, Theo, welcome. Thanks for being here, man.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for receiving me in a more natural form. I would normally be shaved and whatnot, but I'm in Montana and kind of a cabin experience. So, we're roughing it a little bit, but definitely detoxing from the energetics of city life.
Right on. And you're meeting there with some like people that have been in your life for like long time, like
Long
right?
time, yeah. So I had a partial scholarship when I attended university at University of Montana, Missoula for Olympic style Taekwondo. And I competed at a national level for 4 years. And due to injuries and probably mindset at the time, I never made it to the Olympics. But I had a pretty strong relationship with all the guys on the team and my coaches and stuff. And some of them are still here. So I like to come here at least once a year, sometimes twice, and hang out and get to know Montana again too. It's so beautiful here. Just this river I was on a couple days ago was just energetically incredible. I was able to measure it, the subtle energy, and check that out. It was striking how different that river was compared to the one that I measured in Minnesota that was around all the farmland.
Yeah, nice to be there, huh? That's great.
Yeah.
And do you travel with any of your towers when you go to Montana?
This time I did not, because I had a request from a friend of mine who lives in a house, like a conscious community house, and she has 4 roommates. And she requested to lend the towers, borrow them, and the towers know her already, and they're pretty comfortable with her. So we did that, and what's funny is um, after the towers were added, um, 2 of the female roommates decided to uh, vacate the premises because they didn't get along. So it just kind of it amplified and cleaned out something that needed to be cleaned out because they personally weren't getting along or something. So once again, a great example of the towers helping to clean the emotional bodies of folks.
I know that one all too well from when I got my first exposure to towers. So yeah, sometimes people come and people go, and
Yeah.
that can be part of it. So let's talk about your experience in San Diego. And are you experiencing an intensification of the energies of radiation, of toxicity?
Yes.
Like an example would be like I have a distiller on my counter in Maui, and I have never been open to distillation as a water treatment
Hmm.
system, and I'm not out recommending distillers today, but I'm experimenting with them
Yep.
because I'm curious. And
Yeah.
so I never would have thought that was possible for me. What kind of things are you seeing living in the city?
Well, I think there's 2 things going on. And maybe people on the call will identify with this as well. So the first thing that's going on is that, ever since I began my own health journey, I started with physical detox and nutrient replenishment. And then I got to the emotional detox and personal development on that side, and releasing beliefs, feelings, emotions that don't serve me, which was its own journey of a few years, using different modalities. You and I have talked about a couple of them. I tend to gravitate towards what's practical and what works. Um, and I had really good success. But as I've become physically cleaner and energetically cleaner, and this is relative to my old self, I can't speak for me in comparison to anyone else, but in my own experience, I've become more sensitive to inputs. So whether that's toxins in the air, EMF, negative thought patterns from other people, different scalar energy, informational inputs. I feel it more. So that's the first thing that's going on. However, I will say, I had been in San Diego since 2001. It's now 2024, and things have changed. First thing that happened is that during COVID, all the 5G went up. They installed it while people were on lockdown, and in California, it was a hard lockdown. There were no parks open, no beaches, no businesses, no gyms, nothing. You even had police come up to you if you were congregating on a sidewalk. It was really crazy. But all those towers went up, and that added a buzzy feeling to the city. A lot of people don't know this, but those airport scanners where you stand in the box and the thing goes like this, that I never stand in. That is 5G millimeter wave technology. It's microwave. And they tell children and pregnant women not to get in those. But of course, it's okay to have a 5G antenna pointed directly at your house 300 feet away, 24/7. You're only in those airport scanners a couple seconds. Something to think about, right? So that added a buzzy feeling to the background fabric of the city. And we had hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people move from LA and the Bay Area and other parts of the United States, because if you can work remote, which used to be rare, where do you want to go? For a lot of people, it's San Diego. It's got a good reputation as a city. So we're over 4 million people there now. And it's crowded, it's hot, the weather patterns have changed. And overall, it's more challenging. And talking about physical toxins, there's a couple that are quite problematic. It's a reason why I'm doing a dry fast this August, hopefully my longest one ever. But graphene oxide is in everything now. And say what you will, I don't care if people call me a conspiracy theorist, but chemtrails are real. We watch them spray every day, all day in San Diego. It's called geoengineering if you want to look it up and see the scientific terms, but it's used heavily over
Hey,
that
let me
city.
jump in on that one with you for a second. I think it was Nico that taught me something about that the other day, which is the state of Tennessee has outlawed
It outlawed it, yeah.
chemtrail spraying, and yet if you do a Google search on Tennessee chemtrails, it comes back as it's a hoax. So
Yep.
they've outlawed a hoax
Right.
in the state of Tennessee. So is it real or is it a hoax?
Yeah.
Like, what a joke.
Well, one of the challenges is with that is they recently started adding graphene oxide to it. And graphene oxide is really difficult to remove from the body. There's only a couple ways to do it, and it's really damaging to capillaries in particular. It's really sharp. And they're putting it in bottled water now. And there's other toxins that people don't even think about, but you know, when car tires wear down, they release a preservative called 6-PPD into the atmosphere. This is not controlled or regulated at all. And 6-PPD in the Pacific Northwest, where there's bridges and there's a lot of car traffic, that goes into the streams and it literally kills large vertebrate salmon. I mean, big fish, like this size, right? So if it can kill the fish, what's it doing to us when you breathe in this tire preservative? And San Diego is a city that's laced with freeways through everywhere you go, there's a freeway, just the way they built it after World War II. And so if you take your finger and put it on a flat surface and you look at it as black dust, that's what that is. It's from the tires. So there's a
Have you
lot
noticed
of
it? Yeah, have you noticed it on the highways too? Like I did so much driving during COVID 2020 through 2023, and I noticed that on the 18 wheelers now, particularly I did a lot of driving in the Southwest and out through California and stuff, and the tires just shred
yeah,
as they're driving,
yeah,
and
you
they
saw
don't
that.
stop. They just
Yeah, they just keep
the
going.
tires just on the side of the road,
Yeah.
and so we're getting these piles of tires building
Mhm.
up, and nobody's cleaning them up. They're just piling up there.
It's wild. Yeah. It's what's interesting, when I go between San Diego and rural Minnesota, um, San Diego has a lot of earthquake faults through it, which means the land moves, there's movement in the land, and so that it tends to attract a lot of motion and energy in people as well. There's a lot of dynamism to it, and that can be good or bad. 20 years ago, it was kind of a good thing. It's like if you're young, you wanted to make something of yourself, you got out of the Midwest, you went there, and you could become and do anything you wanted. And I feel the energy of the land with the earthquake faults and the shifting of the plates and the movement of the ocean all had something to do with that. But now it seems to have gone in a little bit of a different direction where it's just like, oof, man, the energetics of this are just rough. And then I go to Minnesota and the land is very static. There's not hardly any movement there, no active faults. Everything's just kind of there, and you can see it in how the people are. I mean, most people in rural Minnesota, they get out, they get married in their very early 20s, and if you got a truck, a wife, a kid, and a job, you're set for life. You're good. That's it. And so it's very calming when I go back there and spend some time on the land. and it's really noticeable.
Right on. I just lost my thread for a second. Haven't been sleeping a ton this week. Been doing
Well, we were talking about toxins in cities,
yeah.
EMF in cities, earthquake faults, and kind of how that can contribute to the type of people that are attracted to an area.
Mhm.
And just cities in general, like should you move? Should you stay? I mean, it's a big conversation right now. I would say without the towers, I definitely uh probably would not stay in San Diego as long as I do on some visits.
Yeah. So as you look at like framing that up, like when we were talking that last time, you said, the writing's on the wall, or it feels like it's getting to the place. I think that's the way you said it. It feels like it's
Right.
getting to the place where the writing's on the wall. So
Yeah.
how do you make this decision for yourself? Like, is it time to go and be done there? And what keeps you coming back?
It's funny, I've always been drawn to the ocean. Just from a very young age. I think potentially it was a samskara from, some past experience my soul had or whatever. But even as a kid, I would go to the library in Minnesota and pull out these Jacques Cousteau books, and I just page through them slowly, and I was just fascinated with the underwater world. And I'm in the ocean 2, 3 times a week in San Diego if I can make it happen. Free diving, which is breath hold diving. So you dive for depth with no tanks and very little equipment. And I love it. Even when I had my human design read, which I don't know much about human design, but I will say that the reading I had was super accurate and it mentioned the water thing. So that is one thing that keeps me going back. Of course, I've spent the majority of my life there now, so all my friends are there. That counts for something. But every time I'm in an area like this, this is Missoula, Montana. It's stunning. It's beautiful. It's just so easy. I want to go into town and there's a parking spot. In San Diego, it's a battle. It's like so hard. So I think the question is, does it invigorate me? Does it give me energy? It's always this, right? Does it give you energy or does it take energy? In years past, San Diego gave me energy. I think we could consider it a form of positive stress. I think the technical word for that is eustress. So working out is eustress, right? You're stressing your body, but it grows in response to that in a positive manner. So San Diego used to be eustress. Now it's just stress. It's like, I mean, it's so that's not good, right? I mean, it's kind of like pushing a rock uphill when you want to get stuff done. Whereas here, I extended my stay out here another week just because I was getting so much done. The food was so good, prices were better on everything, and the people here are they're positive. Like you can just see it. They're just kind of positive and healthy, where the overall emotional tone of larger cities in California is one of defeat and stress. You can see it. The inflation's been really hard on people, and it's been challenging for them. And you can see it in the way people drive.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting thing, these energy fields laying over each other. And we have a question in the chat. Nico, maybe you can help with this one. It says asking about the larger towers in the California area. So we have one in San Clemente,
Yeah, San Clemente and Fullerton, I believe.
Fullerton. There you go. Northern California, there's a few more, but Southern California, it's just those two. And as we increase it, I'm sure that will be an area that keeps getting more. We have kind of a community of larger towers that's spreading out from the just south of San Francisco and San Jose, Carmel area. I think there's 3 220s there now in that same small area. And then there's a couple more off in Northern California. But as we build these energy fields, hopefully it becomes a better situation where we can where we can feel harmonious in these environments. You know, I don't know how many people are on the edge of the question of considering giving up where they live. You know, I know a number of us have, like I'm looking at Zane, and I know he was in, you know, a fairly remote place in Massachusetts, and now he's in New Mexico and out in the desert and in a really quiet place. And you know, Nico, you travel all over to different cities and different natural environments. You know, feel free to weigh in with some of your experience here. Um, so,
I have one thing to say about Orange County as
oh,
well.
please.
Um, so she asked what about the radiation situation in Orange County. It's not as bad as San Diego. So San Diego has a dense military population. So in addition to military airports with their radar, which don't follow any standards that the civilians use, there's also an airport in the middle of San Diego. So there's radar constantly, and that's not counting the military aircraft that are always flying overhead with radar on. So Orange County has a lot less of that. I mean, you have Camp Pendleton to the south, but you know, most of Orange County is pretty far away from that. So you're not as affected. And then, yeah, regarding the ocean, yes, I believe the ocean's one of the ways that I get in there, get grounded, and pull all that excess charge out of my body in salt water. So it helps a lot. There's even a technique of using a bucket filled with sea salt and water to ground yourself if you don't have access to the ocean. So yeah, that's 100%.
Yeah, I moved over this week to Kiko's place because she's needing a little support, and I'm on the fourth floor of a senior housing building, and you know, it's just a Wi-Fi hotbed.
Mm.
And you know, there's a 35 here, but I'm used to living more upcountry with a 220 in my living room and 75 in my bedroom and two 35s in my house and a mini. And so I noticed that, like, as Kiko's other friends ask, well, what support do you need? Like, I need you to come here during the day and loan me your car so that I can leave and go up into the EL Valley and swim in the river, and then I can ground like really fully and release everything. And so that's how I've been balancing it. Nico, I'm yeah, and so just to like full disclosure, so with all that going on this week, I've been like caretaking a friend and I'm like up all night and I'm just not sleeping this week, and keeping my focus on this conversation is harder than usual. I can really feel it. So Nico, you're managing the chat. Can you just bring in any summary of these comments or anything that wants to get into the conversation?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's some questions about big towers, and Patricia, sorry, I thought you meant Florida as in the state. I didn't know it was a Florida. Um,
Patricia lives on the west,
Florida. Oh,
west
you
coast
are
of Florida.
okay. And then there is something, let's see, somebody commented on what Theo already said about the ocean having a great effect and grounding and drawing you know, some of those toxins out, and salt's a great neutralizer. What, right? And I also love to be in the oceans. I mean, whenever I get the chance to be in the ocean, I always do it consciously, asking to clear anything that no longer serves me from any and all bodies, right? And you always feel energetically refreshed. But then I guess in to Theo's point, right, we talk a lot about electrosmog with the cosmic towers, right? To where you have the direct effect of the radiation, and then you also have this buildup that's like a fog. And I have to say, whenever you come into LA at night, just look at the glow from the lights coming off the city. And that's kind of how I envision the EMF too, but it's not seen. There's the same cloud of EMF just being around those areas, so you can't really escape it anymore. And how do you feel, Theo? Because you did mention there's a lot of movement in the Earth and the Earth faults, right? So I don't know if you looked into the geopathic stress, because that's a double whammy, right? If you get the EMF, the non-native EMF will then actually even amplify the geopathic stress that is there. Have you done any measurements around that, or if you have tuned into that?
I have, yeah. San Diego is very interesting from an energetic perspective because it's kind of like it's hard. So when you're learning these different energetic measurement techniques or improving your environment, it's kind of like it's like learning on steroids. And I have been working with geopathic stress a lot more recently because I've gotten better at the Lecker antenna. And so for people listening, a Lecker antenna is it's a graduated dowsing rod, basically. And it's a in some senses it's a lot easier to use than a dowsing rod because it takes the intention out of it and you just set it on a number and go and it finds it. And it's really precise. So I've gotten a lot better at finding Hartman and Curry lines on there and banker cubes and all that stuff. And the weird thing about San Diego is just because there's all these earthquake faults and dry caverns and weird stuff underground, it throws off the measurements and the lines twist and turn and do weird things where if I'm at my my mom's property on 70 acres in rural Minnesota, it's just they're like clockwork. You walk over it and with the Hartman lines every 6 to 8 feet, depending if you're going, north, south or east, west, it's like it goes down, it's like very regular. And that's the benefit of the towers too. Because I sent out a newsletter recently about geopathic stress lines because I really wanted to drive the point home that this is a real phenomenon. And the Europeans have done such a good job of doing studies on these from the 1890s all the way through now. And so I did a summary where I'm like, hey, this study was done, this study was done, this study was done. And the nice thing about the tower is you can just set that up and it'll provide through its toroidal field good information to those lines, so it carries that in your house. Where neutralizing them, especially the ones in San Diego, is super tough using other techniques. You have to have a really high knowledge, and the placement has to be down to the millimeter precise to get it right. So yeah. The geopathic stress and the earthquake faults definitely do contribute overall to the feel of the city for sure.
Yeah, and for those that don't know much about those lines, I think it was Hartman or one of the Germans, they actually noticed that where there was an intersection of those lines, like that if people slept on them,
Yes.
they would get cancer actually in this exact location of where those lines crossed, where they would be laying in bed, that organ,
Yes.
right? They noticed a lot of cancer, right? It's a real thing.
Yeah, I have two things to say about that. So just using a simple set of L rods, the traditional rods that people hold in the hands and they cross. I was mapping out the house my mom lives in because she slept in the same place for over 30 years. And I'm like, well, I might as well, check her bedroom, see if she's all right. And there was a crossing on her bed, and I said, "Oh man, this is the side she sleeps on." So I said, "Mom, just hop in bed and just kind of lay how you do when you sleep." Sure enough, that crossing was exactly where her liver is, and my mom has had sluggish, underperforming, liver forever. I mean, for ages. And so I neutralized that line using some pretty primitive techniques but they work. I'm going to change it out this year. And she immediately started sleeping better just from that one thing, and I think geopathic stress lines are lost in the greater conversation around EMF, which is also important. But you have to remember these Hartman and these Curry lines, they also carry EMF stress, and the information from EMF is provided to your cells through these lines. And so if you have a Hartman line that you're sleeping on and it runs through your neighbor's house and they've got Wi-Fi on and this on and it goes to the neighborhood, electrical junction box, like you're receiving a lot of non-helpful information. And it's important to take a look at that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and here's another question from the chat, Theo. Theo, what do you say to the rods to get them to find those lines or other toxic spots? And I do want to add to that when you're looking for those things and when you're tuning into that, you basically make a connection with that detrimental energy. So maybe you can also talk to people about how to like minimize that impact or to protect yourself from that when you're dowsing for those types of energies, if I may add that.
Yeah, so Nico, you might want to do the second half of that question because I know you have more biogeometry and other dowsing training than I do with as far as like neutralizing that. But I'll say two things to that. So to answer the first part of that question, what do you say to the rods to get them to find that? That's really easy. So you first should look up online or in a book like what are Hartman and Curry lines, what's their spacing, and so you have kind of a general concept of what it is you may be looking for. And then I just hold the rods and I say, please show me any Hartman lines as I cross them, and I walk in an east-west or north-south direction because that's how lines are oriented. And so I don't influence the rods after I state that intention, then I ask myself the question, oh, I wonder what's going to happen here. That's it. I just hold that question on my mind. I wonder what's going to happen here. Just kind of a playful thing so I don't influence the rods and just walk around, and they'll cross like clockwork. Like I've taught people how to do this. They picked it up in less than 3 minutes. As long as they don't try to influence it and they think about it and they get too heady about it, you just state the intention, let it go. And that's that. I forgot the second part of that. What were we? Oh, how to not be exposed to the influence. Yep. So in my case, I originally started using the pendulum to find these lines, and that definitely creates a harmonic with the lines, so you get exposed to it. And I tolerate it pretty well, but I know other people who don't. And the rods expose you to it as well. I switched to using a Lecker antenna. It's not easy to find training material on it in English, although if this is a road you want to go down, there's great training through a French company called ACMOS, ACMOS. And the Lecker antennas are built in such a way that it cuts off it cuts you off, it isolates you from what you're measuring. And that was kind of a big innovation in the 50s when they did that, when they created these subtle energy detection devices. But you can pull a tray out, like a little thing, and then it connects you fully to the antenna, and that's for when you're measuring yourself. But if you're ever measuring another person or a Hartman or Curry line, then you push the little tray in and it isolates you from the signal you're measuring, which is a pretty handy thing that I really appreciate about it. So that's what I'm personally doing. I mean, Nico, what can you share with us? Because I'd love to hear it myself.
That's amazing. And it sounded like we started this in a similar way. I also learned with the L dowsing rods, and I was just absolutely amazed how easy it was, right? And back then I didn't have really the knowledge yet, and I would make this like horseshoe shapes in copper, but it would kind of jump the line. So, it would protect your house or remove it, but it wouldn't address the issue, it wouldn't transform the line. Right, which is important, which is why I love the towers, because it's important we address the environment. So I'd say for like using traditional dowsing tools, use whatever protection that you might have learned from your spiritual tradition, right? Grounding to the earth, you know, calling in like source light and really putting a bubble around yourself, right? You can do that. And then we talked about salt water. So after your measurements are done, you know, you can, you know, jump in the ocean if that's available to you, or you can even use salt, you know, a mixture and rub it on you and just clear your aura with your intention, right? So it's important because anytime that we, through our awareness, connect with an energy, there's an information exchange, right? So when you're dowsing, so even when you're connecting with somebody else and doing dowsing, you have to be aware there's an information exchange. So you share information with that organism and vice versa, and you receive information. So it's always smart, you know, before to you know, protect yourself in whatever way works best for you, and then afterwards clear any energies that are not yours that you might have picked up, because I've noticed a lot of healers that are, you know, help a lot of people, but they get sick over time because they have this residue of all the people that they've worked on and the places that they've worked on. So it's something, you know, energy hygiene is really important there to release those energies. Then to Theo's point, that's really cool about sharing that about the Lecker antenna. I didn't know that, but I know if you use the biogeometry tools, those tools are also designed to minimize the impact of when you're measuring, because these tools will actually, a lot of them create BG3, which is the centering vibration. So I know Dr. Kareem has like built that in to minimize the impact of the measurement. So while we're talking about this, Thea, somebody was asking earlier if you don't have access to the ocean, if a saltwater pool has a similar function. Could you comment on that?
Yes, it depends on how many people are using it. If it's a public saltwater pool, that thing's gonna be pretty topped off with some unhelpful energies from people that discharge them in there. But if it's your saltwater pool, I mean, given the volume, it should last, I mean, at least a year or more. I mean, it's the salt crystals themselves that are going to absorb the information, that'll ground out that unhelpful information that your body might be carrying. I know in the pulsar system, that's pulsar with the OR at the end, they have a technique of using those with a bucket of salt water, and one bucket of salt water used one time is enough for one person to completely clear out unhelpful energies. I've done it, and it works really, really well. So a huge saltwater pool, I would imagine you get a lot of use if it's just a few people or a handful of people. So yeah, it's a personal saltwater pool with a sand filter. So I mean, that's the best available you can get. So that's phenomenal. I do want to say, oh, so somebody says, do you immerse totally in the ocean or just your feet? As long as your feet get in there, you're good. I have even used this in rivers. Matter of fact, I went to a river here in Montana in a stunning natural setting, and I busted out the Lecker antenna and I measured it, and it you know, was vital water and had all these good attributes, which is interesting because I measured a river in rural Minnesota that has farmland on the banks of it, and it tested as polluted and non-vital water because the water table there is unfortunately contaminated from all the herbicides. And so testing this mountain water that was coming down from the mountains and seeing that it was vital, it was like super interesting. And Native Americans used to get in creeks and rivers, and they had their own version of what we're talking about with grounding in salt water, which was they would stand facing the current in waist deep water, and they would visualize and ask for the intention for unhelpful beliefs, emotions, energies that don't serve them to leave the body, and the motion, the current coming by would just pull that out. And so I did that meditation and I really felt it. It was like quite an interesting, the rivers are quite an interesting intersection of motion and energy between, the cosmic above and the grounding earth energy below. And the river is the motion, the dynamism between the two. So it was pretty impactful to do that.
When I was in the Eel Valley yesterday, having my swim, I definitely noticed that if I moved into the areas where the water was most turbulent and kind of like hovered in it facing upstream like a fish that's waiting for food to come downstream, I could feel the currents like massaging my body, and it was very different than when I was not in that position. I was like, wow, this is really supportive. And it's funny. I think I got a little overwhelmed earlier in this conversation because the magnitude of the question of like, do I live in the city? Do I not live in the city? And like, how do I make this choice for myself? Like, how do I help you all as a community to feel into like you have your daily life, you're listening to this call, and you want to make a difference, like for yourself. Like, how do you do that? And I think I'm getting it as I'm witnessing Theo and Nico kind of step forth in the conversation that these two brothers who have like become really good friends over time by virtue of what they talk about in their lives and what they do with themselves. They are constantly adding new ways of discerning subtle energy. And they're coming into ever greater alignment with the natural energy forces. So, the backdrop of life as I experience it is that it has given us all the abundance and everything that we need in the world. And then it's given us this culture that sucks our attention out into the outer world and into things that don't support us. And so what's starting to, rejuvenate me in the conversation is I realize the simplicity of, and I remember during the 60,000 miles I drove all over the mainland from 2020 to 2023, findaspring.com was like one of my friends. And it was like, I would just look on findaspring.com, like, where is there natural water around me? And then I would orient where I slept for the night and which roads I took by where I could get closer to water. And so it may be that there is a natural spring near you, and that, making a habit of getting to it is important. Nico's on Maui with me right now, and we make it a habit daily to take my dog Blue and go down to the ocean. And it's like you just do it. You just make yourself go every day. And it's been really great. Nico had something on his skin that's just been responding so well.
Well, I
And
was
so,
bit by a dog in Belgium. It came out of nowhere, a farm dog, and and then the neighbors say, "Oh yeah, the mailman's even afraid to go around that house because he bites everybody." And it bit me in the leg, and it had a really hard time healing. And it just, I think there was an infection. It wasn't a clean dog, but short thing. I was happy to come to Maui because in the ocean, for about a week, it like completely healed up, right?
yeah,
So,
so for those of you who've been around for a while, you know that I spent a stint in Lubbock, Texas. And what you might not be aware of is Lubbock is like one of the last places in the United States that was settled. It's just not a good place to live. And talk about water that you just, you leaves you dry and thirsty. And one of the things that I discovered as part of my healing journey in Lubbock was taking a lot of Epsom salt baths. And I ended up talking with my friend Chad, who's in agriculture, and he's like, "Oh, you want Epsom salts? They make that for agriculture too. It's done under this other name, which I don't remember." And he said, "I've got 2,000-pound pallets of it sitting out in my warehouse that nobody's using." He's like, "You want some Epsom salts?" So I'd go over to Chad and I'd pick up two 50-pound bags of Epsom salts. And when I went to North Carolina, I think I took 250 pounds of Epsom salts with me for a year. And yeah, well, Norris Isaac. getting huge, right? Like, yeah, I would take Epsom salt baths like all the time. So you might think I don't have access to that, or maybe Patricia doesn't want a full-on swim, but she wants to put her feet in the water. Like whatever the step is that you can do, that's the one that's enough. And so, I mean, I can't believe it, but when I just moved my stuff in these big crates from Lubbock, Texas to Maui, I actually had Chad throw 100 pounds of Epsom salts in there. And I just can't get enough of that. So you can email us if you want the name of the agriculture one. I'm too tired to remember that right now. But the bottom line is like I'm finding hope that I want to communicate to you guys in this conversation before we go back to like the cutting edge of what Theo's been researching and what he's learning to keep strengthening himself. And Nico, you can keep sharing too. For me, I need to follow my guidance better. And so you guys hear Theo talk regularly about Holland Franklin as a mentor, and that's somebody that I introduced him to. And she has these line of things called pulsars, and the pulsars have a pendulum, and the pulsar pendulum looks like this. And Theo can tell you more about the science of it. For me, just like simply, it's got a ton of microcrystals in itself, so it cleans itself, and so it's not in the way and doesn't need me to take care of it when I use it. And I need something to be reliable. And then, Nico watched me using that and he's like, hey, there's another way to do it, which is with BG3. And so this is Nico's BG3 pendulum. And, both of them are right here next to me. And what I'm noticing is that it's great to surround myself with brothers like this, but I've been relying on them to guide me. And life is showing me I got to step up. And so that's why these pendulums are right here. And that's why I've been taxing myself on a daily basis to expand in this area. So whether you get some inspiration from one of these guys about the cutting edge of where they're measuring and you start studying something like that yourself, or you just take something simple like getting salt even in your drinking water, if that's all you got access to, right? Maybe you put Celtic salt into your drinking water and that's the thing for you. Or maybe you start taking Epsom salt baths, or maybe you get into the ocean. Maybe you go to more rivers and streams. I'm inspired by the little things that can reach all of us. Because that's the point of the call. It's not to like frame a conversation that's like out there and doesn't help you improve your life.
Well, yeah, and thank you for saying that. I got so excited because I just want to drop this one little thing for people. That's a little thing that can help you that you can take and use after this call. And then I know somebody in the chat wanted to unmute and share something. So Patricia, if you can do that after I finish here, that'd be great timing. I used to be really into the grounding sheets and grounding devices from earthing.com. I was really early on that. So you plug them into the ground outlet in your house and you sleep on these grounding sheets and things. And I never felt good doing that, or at least as good as you're supposed to. And I found out two things. One, more and more people are starting to be aware of. The second one, not very many people know for some reason. So if you're using a grounding sheet, whether it's plugged in to the ground outside or plugged into your outlet, it's exposing you to a lot of dirty electricity, especially if it's plugged into your outlet. Like you're just broadcasting dirty electricity and harmonics of that into your body the whole time you lay on that. If it's plugged in outside with a stake, that is better. But if you live in an urban area or a city, a lot of people don't know this, but electrical power companies use the ground itself as a return. So the ground usually has a positive electric charge too from these power companies. So stake picks that up and routes it into your body. The other thing that not a lot of people know about these grounding technologies is that EMF, stray EMF in the air, it seeks to ground. That's why it's attracted to us, because we're full of this salty water. It's a good place to ground. If you're sleeping on one of those sheets, or you're sitting on one, or whatever during the day in your office, the EMF is it's going to seek to go to ground, and it'll do it through that sheet because that's the easiest route for it to do that. So you're now attracting more EMF than you would have in the before because you have this giant electrically conductive antenna on yourself. So that I stopped using all grounding technologies, and instead I just go outside and stand in the grass or the water or whatever. And at the very least, that's dumping all the positive electrical charge I've built up during the day. And then, I get the electron donation too from the earth if I stay out there for a while. So just want to pass that on.
It's fun to hear you talk about that because I got introduced to the earthing products like in 2013, and it just seemed so obvious that the wellness enterprise and earthing would partner. We would do a joint venture of some kind. Like, we're both helping people ground and providing these harmonic energies. And I went, and one of our partners that promoted a ton of structured water devices got really in with them and started making a lot of money. And I was like, oh wow, this looks really good. I would never do it. And I didn't understand why. And it took a decade of running this company to understand that, one, there's a principle that we have at the Wellness Enterprise, which is if something comes from electricity and then there's a natural version of it, we are never going to be involved with the one that comes from electricity, right? So like the EE systems came 20 years before the Cosmic Tower to the US market, and they built out, and a lot of people know about them, and they come from electricity. And we're not going to be involved with that. Like we have the Cosmic Towers, which are natural toroidal fields. And so I share that principle with you guys. There's ways to structure water that use a blender. I'm like, no way.
I know that device. Yeah, I almost bought one.
Right? Yeah. I mean, I looked at it
early in my journey. Yeah.
Same. And I'm like, I'm sure I can make a ton of money with these things. And I was like, that's not the motivation. The motivation is living in harmonic energy. And so one of the ways we do that is we don't start with solutions that come from electricity. And so you get these people who structure water with computers, and they're like, we can send you the frequency of this for healing this and this and this. And it sounds great. I'm like, yeah, I want that healing. And like, no, I don't want to be involved with that technology either. So anyway, Patricia, thanks for your patience. I just clicked the ask to unmute button. I think you had something to share. You still have something to share, sweetie?
Yes, thank you. I, like you, have some decisions that I have to make because we moved here to Venice, Florida from Cape Cod 5 years ago, and we're living on the border like Venice, Northport. Northport is the fastest growing city in the entire United States. In the last 5 years since we've gotten here, it has exploded. Huge numbers of traffic and people and roads and you name it, it's here now. And I'm exhausted. I'm so tired. And I said to Bob, I think it has something to do with the energy. I wasn't this tired on Cape Cod, but we moved south to get away from the last April we were there. We had 5 days of sun that entire month in April. And I'm a sun person. I like the sun. So we moved. And 5 years ago, this place was perfect. Now everything is, I don't want to go to hell in a handbasket. And so we're leaving on Sunday to go to Boone, North Carolina for 3 weeks. So I'm going to see what that does to my energy field, if indeed it's time for us to leave Florida.
Yeah.
And find a new home. I don't know what we're going to do, but I'm open. And Theo, I am so glad you said that about a grounding sheet. I used to use a grounding sheet, and I used it for a long time, and it started to shred. So I took it off and I threw it away.
Yeah.
And I do have one of those structured water units that has all these little glass balls in it, and you put it under the faucet and it drives the water. And that has nothing to do with electricity or anything, but it does structure the water.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that's still okay to use. And let's see, what else did I want to ask? That's it. I've got whether to move.
Yeah, regarding the Florida thing, there's something there. really interesting about Florida, not a lot of people know about, is that the potable water there, the fresh water that's available to drink, needs a lot of help. A lot of it is recycled because Florida is basically a sandbar, and there's a high amount of pharmaceuticals there in the water because of the anti-aging clinics and things that are there. And you can avoid that. Of course, Florida has spring water, but if any of you on the call have heard of deuterium depleted water, deuterium depleted water is prevalent in high elevation mountain streams, and there's a lot of deuterium in Florida's water, which is really hard to remove. And deuterium, basically, think of it as throwing a wrench in the gears of some machinery, and the gears take the wrench and they slow down as they try to get the gear through them, and it's just not working as well. That's what deuterium does, literally, in a physical sense, to the little spinny bits in your mitochondria as they generate electrons. It gunks up the machinery. So that is a consideration about Florida that not a lot of people think about, but we're all water people on this call, I think. That was my gateway into the wellness enterprise years ago as a customer. And so that's something to think about, is the water quality where you live. If you're going to North Carolina, I mean, there's plenty of springs around there. And it is a quality of life thing, in my opinion.
Well, Florida and Texas have the worst water in the United States. We're the furthest south, and all the whatever you want to call it heads down to us. And so I have a Kangen water machine. I have we have a whole water system all over the whole house. Plus, I have what I bought from Patrick years ago, which was the structured water unit. So I'm trying to cover everything while we're down here.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you're in really good shape. But it's an interesting thing about Florida. You've got the water with a lot of deuterium in it, and then you've got, underneath Florida, there's karst topography, which is basically like caverns, limestone caverns, and underground streams and rivers. And underground streams and rivers can have a seriously detrimental effect on your health, which is hard for people to wrap their heads around because it's natural, it should be fine, right? The radiation that those produce, like water running through a cavern underground or running through a stream course underground underneath your house, that's actually measurable by traditional instruments if they're sensitive enough. It's a big deal. So Florida as a state is laced with all these underground streams and underground caverns, some dry, some not, but they all have different energetic resonances that may not be helpful. Nico, is there anything you can add about the underground stream thing?
No, I agree with you, and it's well known. You can actually move them through consciousness, right? That can be moved to another location. But yeah, I mean, I have a general question, Tia, because a lot of people live in cities, right? Not everybody can move out of a city, right? What do you see as the solution for our world? And
yeah, I mean, that's a good point. And it's still one that, I mean, I'm living this right now. San Diego has changed a lot, really ever since 2020. Just the energetics shifted in a weird way that wasn't helpful. So for me, I took it upon myself to really learn about subtle energy and beneficial, positive subtle energy things that I can do. So, I started learning biogeometry and dowsing and about geopathic stress and the cosmic towers and and this has come up in the chat with somebody where we were having a conversation directly, but they're asking, well, don't the towers protect you? And absolutely they do. When I come home in San Diego, it's like I'm literally stepping into a bubble of hush. It's the best way to describe it. It's just kind of like, okay. and that buzziness goes away, and I sleep really good. And I even started taking the mini with me in my bag in the city, you know, because it helps, you know, kind of take that bubble with me wherever I am in the city. And so there's things that you can do like that. I mean, anybody can go get some sea salt in a bucket and do a nice solution of sea salt, and you can just stick your feet in that and have the intention to ground out any beliefs, emotions, feelings that don't serve you, and it will go into that bucket. The salt crystals will help you, and they will capture that energy and pull it out of your body. Um, and just don't water your plants with it, because the plants will be sad. I learned that the hard way. That actually happened. There's other systems too. I mean, Cosmic Tower is the easiest. You just buy it, set it up, and you're off and running. And it does geopathic stress lines and helps you with your energetic bodies and your emotional bodies and EMF harmonization, all that. But there's solutions in between. I mean, there's a company, oh gosh, I can't remember their name, but they make little units that you can put in the four corners of your house that help with geopathic stress. I mean, heck, biogeometry, you can get a pack of their L90 or L66 stickers for a few bucks, and you can put them on the four corners of your house, and that will produce an immediate noticeable effect. So there are things you can do, but this is something that I'm working through right now, because I think it's probably time to leave. But you know, all my friends are there, and the ocean's there, and my community is there. So in the meantime, I'm doing these subtle energy techniques and kind of just going from there.
Yeah, thank you, Theo. And Richard, I know you've had your hand up for a while. If you can turn your camera back on, so I know you're ready to ask your question. Theo, oh, where did Richard go? I would like to add to what you were saying, which is that I think ultimately with the situation we're in, it's all about harmonizing, right? And then back to what Patter was saying, it's all about also coming back to ourselves, because all of us, you know, we're not just talking about electrosmog, but our thoughts, our emotions, they all create a smog, right? So you know, it's kind of like the chicken and the egg. It's like if you're in an environment that constantly takes your energy, it's even harder to have more energy for spiritual practices,
That's
right?
it.
But
That's the question you got to answer. Does this environment increase my energy, or does it take from me? And that's what I love about the Bovis scale. We've talked about it a few times on various calls, but it's a super easy way to see if it's below 6,500 Bovis units, then it takes energy from you. So I probably shouldn't eat it, or I probably shouldn't stay in this room that long. If it's above 6,500, then it gives you energy. And you know, every time I've measured somebody's house that before and after a Cosmic Tower, it just goes, you know, straight up. So it's an energy giving environment. And when I'm in San Diego, that's literally how I recharge. I'm all night sleeping by the towers and some of the other things that I've done to improve the environment. And so I go back into, you know, the chaos, and it's like, oh, okay, you know, I'm fine. But it's just a question of, you know, how much longer do you want to have to push back against all that?
yes, and I think ultimately it comes down to consciousness, because I see a bright future for the planet and for humanity, because I know as our consciousness shifts, guys, the solutions are already there. They're all there. They have been suppressed. I mean, clean, free energy has been around for over 100 years, right? It's just been suppressed. Like, you know, the medical system we have, it's a for-profit system, but there are all kinds of technologies out there to, you know, to heal us. I mean, for every issue we have on the planet, the solution also exists. How
That's
does the
right.
solution come into our life, it's when we shift our consciousness. So each and every one of us, right, when we connect more, you know, to our own source and go within, and we change our energy field and we raise our consciousness, that allows those solutions to come in, because ultimately we're gonna have to harmonize this whole mess we've created. Mother Earth's been very patient with us, right? She could shake us off like a dog shakes off water, you know, from its skin, but she's just been patient with us as a mother. But it's time for us to grow up and, you know, to really build our own energy fields. And then the cosmic towers can help, and there's other solutions out there like biogeometry. The more we harmonize, the more it's going to uplift the consciousness. The more our consciousness shift, we become like walking cosmic towers. So whatever you can do in your own way to raise your energy and to shift your consciousness, know that you're helping the planet. And that's the way I personally believe that we're going to get out of this. Theo, I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but
I have a couple quick things to say, because I know probably a time thing here, but one of the easiest, fastest, least expensive ways that I have found to shift my own consciousness in the last year has been really simple. It's been using flower and mineral essences, and it's just been really impactful. You know, they're not really homeopathics. The preparation is somewhat similar, but they treat feelings, they treat emotions. And so sometimes being in the city, I can find myself getting a little negative. And so I'll pull out a dowsing chart, and it'll have flower essences on there. Bach is a good one to start with, because they cover all the bases. Flower Essences Services, FES, is a great company. Pegasus is another one. Alaskan Essences is wonderful because he does the flower essences plus mineral essences. So you can do an essence of gold, of you know, magnetite, depending on what you test for. But I'll pull out my pendulum, and I'll use a dowsing chart, or I'll just even go into the store and I'll just ask the pendulum to show me a yes when my index finger points at one that would serve my highest and best self. That's the only question I ask. And then I'll use the essence, and it treats an unhelpful feeling. It literally just goes away, and I'm in a better, higher state of consciousness, because it can be hard to try to force yourself to be in a higher state of consciousness. And I really like flower and mineral essences for that. And actually, Alaskan Essences, the home is here in Missoula, Montana, and the owner, he's been doing this since the 80s. He goes up to Alaska once a year, and he gathers all the raw materials because he feels the Alaskan environment has the purest flowers and some of the purest minerals available on the planet. And he brings them down here to the Bitterroot Mountain Range, and he processes them in this amazing natural setting. So he does sell those online, that's been very helpful for me to shift my consciousness. And I see there's another question. Can you measure your personal energy field with the Bovis? If so, how is it done? That's really easy. You can find a Bovis chart for free online. And I prefer to use a pendulum with that particular chart. You just hold it over the chart, and you can take your left hand, place it on your heart, and hold the pendulum in your right hand over the chart, and you say, please show me my personal Bovis score, and it'll show you. It's that simple. And then somebody else asked, Jack Foster asked about the question about the magic. I actually don't know much about those practices. Nico, do you have anything to add, or Patrick? I don't know much about it.
Yeah, I can comment on that. So magic, in the sense, I mean, magic can be used both ways, right? For beneficial and for detrimental. But Jack's talking about the positive purposes, which is basically utilizing the power of nature. And I just want to share what Harold used to say about that. Harold would talk about, yes, you can use nature, to transmute or to create certain effects. But the issue with that is that we're always borrowing that energy from nature, right? And nature already, the energy level is pretty low because of all the destruction that has taken place on this planet. So one of the things that he would talk about with the towers that's highly beneficial is that in order to transmute or to get to certain outcomes, we're not, cannibalizing nature. We don't keep taking the energy from nature, but we're actually bringing new pure energy and higher energy in, which then is helping to raise the energy of nature. So absolutely, I think magic, if you make it your practice, it can be used, right? But he has it also in relationship to the tower. It's really great with the towers that we're not borrowing that energy from nature. We have to stop doing that and become stewards again of nature and help the energy of nature. And you're a part of nature, right? And when you start connecting with your own source, and that energy goes out in the environment, we're incredibly powerful, right? So as we shift our consciousness or we learn to connect directly to source, the impact is amazing. There's been studies done around that when high-level meditators come together and all put their consciousness together, how the crime rate drops, right? These are all things that have been done. So don't discount yourself. I would say get to a place, as Theo says, to where you're in an environment that your energy is positive. So you have the energy to do this and keep cultivating your own energy and your own field. And that's how we will shift the energy on the planet. So
Thanks,
just wanted
Nico.
to share that.
I'm going to see if I can wrap everything up and say a few words about Lavanya here. So this call that we're having is in the Lavanya time slot. We teach in Lavanya every Thursday at 3 o'clock Eastern time. Like Nico is the second Thursday of every month, and he teaches on what we term emotional intelligence. And, there's never a never-ending deepening to becoming more capable of being more present and more skillful in meeting the emotional challenges of life and creating harmony there. And so what Lavanya is doing is right now we're kind of in a stable place, and I really like things dynamic and growing, so it's honestly kind of pissing me off right now that it's at a status quo because I just want to go with it, but it's God's plan or the creator's plan. It's not my plan. It's an unfoldment. And so the status quo is Tara teaches breathwork the first Thursday of the month, and then Nico teaches the emotional intelligence, and then Zane teaches Qigong, and then Dr. Ann Merkel teaches on different energy medicines. And then if there's a fifth Thursday or Tara's on vacation, this one, then we get a guest like Theo, and we open those guest ones up to the greater community. For those of you who aren't members yet, the point of coming to those Thursday sessions is to raise your vibration. It's the part where you turn into you and you develop more skillfulness. Like, who has mastered breath to the point that they're complete and they have the best awareness of breath and everything is aligned? Like, none of us. We can always deepen that. And Tara teaches that every month, and she is a world-class teacher. And there's a small number of people in those sessions, and you can come as like a semi-private or small group, and it's extraordinary every single time. And then Nico teaches every week, and sometimes there's 30 people when Nico teaches, and sometimes there's 6, and it's like the only thing wrong is that there aren't 30,000 people in there, and we're not like just busting it out across the planet. And probably that's just my listening of that being something wrong. Like, everything's perfect the way it is, but I just want you to know what's there. It's just the jewels to be raising you up and to have you deepening the relationship with yourself. And then for the next part of Lavanya, we don't have like a major staff and we're paying people to develop the marketplace. It's listening to the creator about what wants to happen next. And I've been involved with a nonprofit on Maui, and that nonprofit went through a change in leadership and it kind of lost its essence. And I've been really searching inside, like, what was the feeling that I loved in that nonprofit, and what do I actually want to create? And it takes me back all the way to the origins of Lavanya, because Lavanya started because I was at Costco in Lubbock, Texas, and I wanted to go inside and buy some sweet potatoes. And they told me that I couldn't do it unless I put a mask on. And every other time I'd gone to that store, when they told me that, I just walked right past the person. I was like, yeah, well, I'm going in anyway. And this time they actually stopped me and sent me away. And I just stood there thinking, and I was like, if these people can tell me what I have to do for my health to get a sweet potato, this does not end well. Costco cannot be my supplier of food, or I'm at some point going to face a choice that I don't want to have to make. And so originally the dream was to start Lavanya around food, and it just has never taken shape. I haven't had the energy and the resources. So recently, as I've been contemplating, like, what do I really want to create next in my career, in my vocation, in my culture? I want to give people food that has living energy in it and get a hug back. That's it. That's what I want. That's my current understanding. And Maui's got wild animals and wild plants, and just abundant production of food is available here. And so I'm working on positioning myself so that I can receive a lot of that food, or have it pass through my hands from me and people that organize around the same principle to people who need it, because they're on the edge of food here is really expensive, and getting it for free is a big deal. If you offer free food on Maui, people show up. And so I'm just looking for giving people wild food. It doesn't come from Costco. It doesn't come in a plastic. It comes from nature, and the exchange is a hug, and that's it. And so I offer that to you now, to see where in your life you can do something. You can start an herb box at your house and grow some herbs this summer, and just eat one leaf every day to get that wild energy in your mouth. Or you can go walk and get your feet in the ocean, or whatever the piece is for you of touching nature and touching that wild energy. And then do that with what you're consuming as much as possible, and then spiritually come back here and learn with us. So we'd love for you to be members. We thank all the people who are members for being members, and we love the bigger Wellness Enterprise community, and that you tune in for these conversations, and we hope more of you will just keep tuning in. So that's kind of the big picture of what's going on here. I see the chat is like really going, and I see Theo's really paying attention to that now. So I'm done, but let me see what else wants to be talked about on this call before we wrap it up. Theo, you gonna lead that?
Oh, I was seeing if anybody else was going to chime in.
Well-
No, I think we covered a lot. I just want to make sure that people got value from the call, with actual like concrete things you can take and do. So I think the saltwater grounding technique for beliefs, feelings, emotions that don't serve you, whether it's in a bucket with salt water or the ocean, is good. Using the EMF grounding sheaths and devices may not be helpful, because straight EMF is now going to ground through that and you. I think that's a good takeaway. We had some great stuff about geopathic stress lines and kind of what to do there, and the Bovis scale again a little bit. That was, by the way, originally created by a doctor to measure how much positive energy food contained that he was feeding chronically ill patients in his clinic to help them heal. So it was food-based, just, and Patter, you're just talking about food. So and wild food, and getting that essence in there. And the only other thing I'll finish up with is findaspring.com is awesome. Even outside of San Diego, there's springs that are free. I recently went to one and filled up every jug I had. And as soon as I drank that spring water, this was from about 8,000 feet up in elevation, so it was primary water, just from deep in the Earth's core, and all that pressure pushing it up 8,000 feet above sea level. Man, that energy felt good. So it was kind of like Nico was saying, I became, for a little while anyway, as I was drinking that water, like a walking cosmic tower. I raised my own own vibration, and that definitely carried me for a while. So that's all I got.
You guys, Theo, will you type in the chat, and also I'll ask you to share verbally in a second where people can find you.
Sure.
So you guys, Theo helps people measure their homes before and after getting a tower. He does personal consultations. He's part of the Cosmic Tower sales team loosely. Just like sometimes people want to go through Theo, and that's really amazing. He has his own line of supplements, and in particular one called Bio Recharge, which is a great way to get minerals into your body. He's got various websites and email address, and yeah, just come back on verbally for a second once you're done typing, and tell us like how people can find you so that it's in the recording too. And
Yep.
anybody that, Theo's a friend of the Wellness Enterprise. We don't have like a formal. I've tried to hire him, and he's not hireable. He's too independent a being. So we just keep him as close as we can. And you guys are all welcome to go track him down and do things with him. And I do. So I would think he would want to too.
Well,
So,
I started as a customer of yours and went through about every device you sold at the time, and I love talking to my customers about the Wellness Enterprise. I believe I just had one talk to your son today in Canada. He's very excited to get his new AE, the Aqua Energizer. So yeah, this is thank you for the mention. I didn't even expect that. I just want to come in here, and I just like talking to people about this stuff and hearing what other people have to say. And yeah, if you guys get a chance to check out these Alaskan essences, the mineral essences, I believe he's the only guy doing that, at least at scale currently. Wow. I mean, man, I could tell I was having a little bit of an energetic detox when I got here. I was feeling a little negative, and they had the whole display, and so I used my pendulum, and there were 3 that I tested for, so I made a little concoction in my own dropper bottle, and they've been really helpful. So check that out. These flower essences and mineral essences are great.
that's
Yeah.
awesome. So guys,
Go
he's
ahead.
Theo Lucier. He's at theo@forgottenhealth.com or www.forgottenhealth.com, and his main supplement product is getbiorecharge.com. And that's it for me. Nico, you had something else you were saying?
Yeah, I just wanted to add something to that because Theo had sent me some of his supplements, and he's actually been doing what I've been talking about for years. Like, people are so focused on the physical, the chemical of the supplement, and I've always been saying the future is going to be about what energy the supplement carries, what subtle energy. So Theo has put a lot of thought and a lot of effort in actually making sure that he doesn't have the purest supplement from just a chemical point of view, but also that it has the highest energy in it, and that energy is protected through the packaging. So together with Holland, he actually designed this package, that the packaging that has biogeometry within it. It's gorgeous, it's beautiful packaging. And it actually, I started taking the Bio Recharge when I was here, Theo, and I can immediately feel it, like in my body, like the subtle energy of it. It's so different from anything else that I've taken. And I really love that you're doing that, because that really is the future of supplements for me. Not so much about the chemical, but really about the energy, right? Because all is energy.
Thank you so much for saying that, and I love it that you mentioned that. Yeah, as I became energetically more sensitive, I realized that a lot of the supplements that I take for micronutrients, they don't feel as good as they should. And so the question is, why? And the answer is, well, they get contaminated by EMF, microwave radiation, even the thoughts of people that are around them, where they're processed, where they're made. So yeah, I designed the packaging with Holland to harmonize and protect the contents from negative influences. And one thing everybody on this call can take and use right away, I do this anytime I go to the grocery store, and I learned this technique from Holland Franklin, is that barcodes emit a type of non-beneficial subtle energy called vertical negative green, which is talked about a lot in the biogeometry system. And if you have a barcode on a food package or produce, you know, they stick the little barcode sticker on it. It's a huge bummer. If you take and draw an infinity sign over it, it eliminates that vertical negative green. So I'm required to have a barcode on my packaging per the manufacturer. So every barcode has an infinity sign printed over it to eliminate that in my packaging. But if you guys are buying supplements as well and it has a barcode on the bottle, it's really well served for you to take out a little Sharpie and draw an infinity sign on it. Just make sure that it's unbroken and you do it clockwise. It'll fix it.
Yeah. And then Theo, if I can ask you a quick selfish cosmic tower question, because I love getting your input, because you're so sensitive and you measure and you work with it. You've had a cosmic tower 35 and then recently got a 75, right? Could you talk about the differences or about your experience? Because it's a question I get a lot from people. Should I get a 35 or 75? So now that we have you here, do you mind answering that?
Theo, I'm gonna handle that one. So Nico, just before this call started, I did another recording with Theo, and I asked him that very question. And
Perfect.
it's in our Zoom account. So we'll be publishing that next week,
Awesome.
or
Thank
maybe the
you.
week after. Yeah, but thank you. Thank you so much. All right, I think that's a wrap. Thank you guys. Thank you guys so much. Love you all for being here and your openness. I feel you're just leaning into the call and taking in this information, and I love that. So thanks for being in our community and for showing up, and we'll see you guys next time. Take
Hey,
care.
thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye,
you.
See you
everybody.
guys.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Nico.